which I have done before.
So have I.
Yeah,
And I think
we did it with Britt Salvesen.
we
Yes,
did.
we did.
Yeah,
Completely forgot.
that was unfortunate. We were so
Yeah,
We were so
it was our
enthralled.
excited.
first.
Yeah. Um, I think we should let them in like 30 seconds past 4:30
Sure.
and then maybe
Yeah.
wait a minute.
Oh, I mean, almost five.
Past five, yeah.
We're almost five. You said 4:30. It's all good. We're just,
That's what I meant.
yes, I know.
That's,
Yep.
you
I do
you
know.
read between the
I did read
lines.
between the lines.
Good thing you
And then
guys know
people
each
are
other.
just going to be in.
Yeah.
People are just going to be trickling in.
And it's gonna be a great show.
Good luck, Jeff.
No luck needed.
Yeah,
Yeah, no luck needed.
Thanks.
really looking forward to it.
I better start writing some things down.
We're all friends here.
Here, but then you're gonna let all those other people in.
They're all friends too. Oh, Ashley's here.
Ashley.
From Street Photography Magazine.
Oh, that's nice.
Amanda Smith, Lori.
Ashley Refund?
Yes.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, every once in a while, we all get these emails, and every once in a while I go, "Oh, Ashley, that's so cool. Congratulations on doing that."
Yeah. She was in the program.
Yeah. And you had Bob?
I had Bob. Yep.
Okay, let me know when I should. How are we feeling?
Ready?
Fire away.
Okay. So, and then
So, yeah, when do you want me to get rolling?
let's let everyone trickle in for like until 5:03 and then you can
And then we'll
share the
start.
screen.
Okay,
And then whenever you share the screen, we're starting.
Yep.
got it.
Okay.
So 2 more minutes.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. We're so happy you're here. We're going to give everybody a couple minutes to join us. You can put in the chat where you're coming in, calling in from, or zooming in from. Really happy to see so many familiar faces. Hi, Ave. Hi, Ian. See lots of lovely people. Hi, John. Very fun. Here we go. It's a nice way to end your evening tonight before dinner, or in some cases after dinner. Okay. Ah, Christine, welcome. Mar Vista, New York. Hi, Lynn from New York. Yay, so happy to have you here. Okay. Got a nice, wonderful audience for Jeff.
It's very exciting to see so many people I know.
Right?
Meg, Lynn, Ave was on the program. Very nice.
Okay. All right, Doug, you ready? Let's.
I am ready. Let's see if the technology is ready with me. Greetings, everyone. I'm Pasadena Photography Arts co-director Douglas Hill. I'd like to welcome you all to our latest forum virtual presentation of the Crit House, exploring critique, influence, and great photographic work with host Jeff Larason. But first, from the beginning, PPA has been dedicated to fostering the photography community on the east side of Los Angeles. Toward that end, we are proud to support these institutions dedicated to photography and the arts. Today's forum is very generously being underwritten by photographer and PPA founder Bill Wishman. If any of you out there would like to help us present future forum or open show, please contact us at pasadenaphotographyarts.org. We appreciate all the support we can get. Speaking of which, we have had an excellent turnout for tonight's event. We'd especially like to thank all of those of you who made a donation when ordering your tickets on Eventbrite. Although we're an entirely volunteer organization and don't charge admission to any of our events, we do have expenses and appreciate that help. It's never too late to make a contribution, which you can do at any time on our website. We have a special announcement. As you may know, the 270,000-acre Tejon Ranch recently opened up to the public for the first time in its history. Photographer Mark Dufell and former Lancaster Museum of Art and History Museum manager-curator Andy Campagnoni will be leading what promises to be a remarkable tour of the ranch leading up to Golden Hour on October 15th of this year. Spots are available on a limited first-come, first-served basis at PasadenaPhotographyArts.org. This tour will be a wonderful opportunity to shoot alongside fellow Pasadena Photography Arts community members, share tips in the field, and experience a side of Southern California that most people never get to see except from the 5 freeway. There are more events coming up in the second half of 2026, including the announcement of the winner of our 4th annual prize and another installment of Open Show. So check in at, you guessed it, PasadenaPhotographyArts.org for updates. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ellen Friedlander.
Oh,
Ellen.
I'm so happy. Thank you, Doug. So happy to be here tonight. Jeff, I'm just going to share a little bit more about you. Jeff Larason is a photographer whose work explores place, light, geometry, and everyday life. Working primarily in Boston, in and around Boston, his photographs examine how people move through the city and how moments can reveal emotional and social narratives. In addition to his photographic practice, Jeff is the creator and host of The Crit House, a YouTube series featuring conversations with photographers about the images and artists that have influenced their work. He teaches workshops and lectures on street photography and visual storytelling and photographic seeing. And I have to say, Jeff and I met in 2021 when I had my very first street photography open show, and I curated him in. And I'm really, really excited to share his journey tonight and share the Crit House. Thank you. Okay, Jeff, take it away.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm going to share my screen here, but as I do that, I am going to say that I wasn't nervous until I just saw all of the people that are on there and all the people that I recognize who have both been on the program, and now I'm nervous. So I'm getting a little delay on my computer on this side, but I really want to thank PPA for inviting me to participate in this. I've really worked to be a lifelong learner in the things that I do, and the process of going back and looking at the over 200 episodes I've done on the Crit House with some of the people who are on this call, and seeing the people I've talked to and the things that we've talked about and the series that we've had and how I have grown as a photographer has really been a great experience for me. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you about what I've learned, but mostly I'm just appreciative of the ability to be able to have spent more time thinking about that in the process that I've gone through. So if you don't know what the Crit House is, the Crit House is a relatively small YouTube channel. There are some that are huge that have millions of followers. We have not quite that many. We have a good following. At the moment, I'm on a sabbatical as I deal with some work issues and get busy with that. But we'll be back in the fall with new episodes and some new things to put on the program. But the program started off as a critique channel, and the reason it did that is because for a very long time as a photographer, I did my work in relative isolation, meaning that I didn't have a community. I didn't have people that I knew that were photographers, even the people that I knew that were close to me. My best friend didn't know that I was a photographer. We ran together it was just not a part of my life that I opened up. And even members of my family, we weren't an artistic family, so they didn't understand what I was doing or even know necessarily that I was out there. So I didn't have a community. I didn't have people to talk to about my photography. I had a dark room, but I'd print and then they'd go into boxes and no one really saw them. And I never received the input from on those images. And for a long time, I stagnated and I wasn't moving anywhere. And then I had the great good fortune of speaking to somebody who essentially as a gift gave me a critique, gave me a gift of a critique to somebody else. And so I sat at a coffee shop after decades of taking pictures with a gentleman named Bill Franson in Newburyport, Massachusetts, and for an hour to an hour and a half, and we just looked through the boxes and boxes of photographs that I had, and he told me for the very first time in my life things about my photography that I had never known about or thought about or seen in my imagery. And it was this eye-opening experience to have an understanding that you need to be able to see your photography through somebody else's eyes and to be able to have some context and understanding of it. And that cup of coffee at that coffee shop in Newburyport changed everything for me. And it led me to start recognizing the importance of community. And also on this call is Meg Birnbaum, who was the atelier instructor for the first class I took after that critique that I had in Newburyport. And that opened my eyes more and it introduced me to people that I have continued to work with in different critique groups here in the Boston area. So for decades now, or for almost a decade with that critique group, and that community has spread out to, I mean, not only the people on this call, but all of the people I've talked to on the program over the years, and all of those people have led me to understand and learn. It's given me that knowledge and discovered not only at the time how much I had to learn, but still at this very moment how much I still have to learn as a photographer and as a person. So when I started the program, the Crit House, what I thought I was starting was I was building a critique channel, which is why it's called the Crit House. And the first series that we had were people coming together and showing their photography to get input and critique from experts. So I brought in people who had been working on projects or just a body of photography, and I brought in two people to come and talk to them about what they're seeing. Because what I thought was where I was in the process that I didn't know how important that was. And it was my assumption, and I think I was right, that there were a lot of people toiling out there who also didn't know it and could benefit from this input on their work so that they could grow and they could have their eyes open. And it wasn't just people who had never had it done before, but people who had been working on projects. And then as time went on, we expanded the program to other series and we started doing other things. And I started to realize that what I was actually building was my own little master's program for myself. You know, I actually didn't even graduate from college, but I certainly didn't study photography. So I never had that formal education. And this program, the Crit House, through all of the different series and all the different discussions was my way of learning. And these are essentially what I'll be talking about tonight, because these are the 5 lessons that resonate with me a moment. That number one, that great photographers do not work alone. I mean, we all know of the one great photographer who legendarily kind of worked alone and then died before her work was discovered. But for the most part, there are other people who are helping with that work. Secondly, that most photographers don't begin with the answers. You know, you go out and you capture images, but you don't know where you're going with it until you get to that destination. And then it's also important, number three, like that influence isn't about imitation, that we're all influenced by others, whether it's people or work or art forms, and not just photography, but books and music and movies and music and poetry. And it's important to kind of recognize that as you go out in the world to learn those things and not just look at photographs themselves. Number four, the great photographs begin with curiosity. And this might be the biggest lesson for me because I'll be honest with you, as a young person, as a child, I wasn't that curious. You know, I played sports, and even when I grew up and became a relative adult, I just did my job. And it really wasn't until I picked up the camera and started to look at things and realize things, that's when I started to become curious as a human being. And then the final thing I'll talk about is just how I've learned that photography, the act of doing photography, changes the photographer themselves. So, um, number one, great photographers don't work alone, and this is that idea of community, and it's something that I've talked to Ellen about quite a bit. That idea that you need others around you, that others around you that will give you not only input, but will be able to allow you to see their work and be a part of developing that photographic language, that everyone needs a team, that it's not just about communication either. It's about somebody, helping you with the design of your book or helping you to see something in the sequence that is out there. And a lot of the discussions that I had started to recognize that, there are people who can provide you with something in your work that you would not be able to do on your own. And it's good to have those people in your life. And I'm just going to pause for half a second because I just realized that if you, by the way, have questions while I'm talking about this, please jump in and ask the question. I know that there you can put it in the chat, and Ellen or Lexi will be able to ask me as I go along because I'm not sure that you want me just yapping around for another 45 minutes or half hour or so. But so if you have questions, please feel free to send that along. Let's see. Now I'm not able to forward here for some reason. I have lost control. So let's see.
Do you need to restart?
No, I think I've got it here. Sorry, I just kind of went around here. So great photographers don't work alone. Let me share this again. Sorry about that. I apologize. We're going to start with some video, and hopefully the Zoom gods are on our side because I've done a lot of Zoom calls and video audio never works. So hopefully that'll be the case here today, that we will actually get our audio to work. So this is Sarah Lean. Sarah Lean is the first female National Geographic director of photography. She is amazing, and she talked a little bit about that, the importance of that
And the
collaboration.
benefit of like working with an editor is that second pair of eyes that isn't so close to the work, because as you know,
Yeah.
being a photographer yourself, how hard it is to edit your own work, right? It's so difficult. You're so close to it. And having an editor, you have really the quintessential reader, the viewer. And so their experience of the work is so different than when you're a photographer. I mean, editing my own photography, very difficult, right? There's some photographers I worked with that really good at it, but many need that help. And I'm like still doing that. I still find that that's my best contribution to our community, is helping photographers see their work in a different way.
Such an honor to speak with her, and such an amazing person who still helps me with things when I have questions about different things. But that idea of needing others to look at your work because you can't see it yourself, that is something that has been repeated through a lot of the conversations I have. Sam Abel, a national treasure, has been on the program on a number of occasions, and here he's going to start talking about a book, and then he'll go on to that necessity of having other people to work with you.
I love books and their beauty, their finish, their how they feel in my hand, the object itself. And it doesn't have to be, I'm not talking about money exclusive. I'm talking about love.
Yes.
I would like to make this book, and I feel like I have made up to this point. I've made this book with people who are loving toward it, and I want that in the printing and in the binding. Maybe the thing I want to stress here right now is collaboration. I need it, I value it, and I would say that I love it. It's life itself to collaborate with like-minded people on a high-minded project.
Sam being one of our great photographers and perhaps one of our greatest educators, photo educators as well. He does have a 2-volume set of his books, of his photography coming out at some point. I don't know when that is, but that was one of the things that he was talking about in that episode. This is Sig Harvey, who is based out of Maine. Sig is a lovely photographer, and she again is going to talk here, and you'll see her in a couple of minutes as well. She's here with us twice today.
I mean, it's so important to have that second, third, fourth set of eyes on the work because, making projects and writing and photographing, it's a very inward process, isn't it? We're sort of working alone oftentimes, perhaps getting a little feedback here and there, but it's a solitary walk in many ways. And that's absolutely wonderful. And for it to be truly authentic, you need to tap into that, who you are and how you want to be vulnerable with this work. But then there's such an important moment when it comes to sharing the work. So I'll often work with a couple of people before it even goes to the designer, and we'll talk about a sequence and an edit. I work for Emerald Drifters, I worked with Madeleine Morlaix, who was wonderful, very good friend of mine. I trust her implicitly to talk about sequence and edit. And then I'll often do table reads with good reader friends. And we read the entire book out loud 3 or 4 times and, think about, well, is that landing right? Am I being clear with what I mean there? Just talking it through. And that to me has been super valuable to do these table reads. And then the pictures, starting moving things around. That's a very sort of digital process initially. Then it gets printed out on the floor, moving things around, taking some time away from it, coming back with fresh eyes. So it's that whole discussion. It's very outward in many ways. It's the opposite of the making of the work. And then taking that initial package and taking it to Jeanette, the designer, and saying, here you go.
I think that one of the things that when I started off thinking about doing my own book, there was this idea that I'm just going to do it. But I very quickly realized how little I know about design or sequence or the printing process and all of those things that other people know about. And clearly Sig talked about those things that you need other people there. In fact, I'll go back to mentioning Meg again, who helped me with my book Sonder when I came out. It would not have come close to what it was without her input and the input of other people. So that collaboration, there's so many people, even Sam talking about it, the people at National Geographic and the publishers, including Sarah Lean, great photographers seek out that collaboration. It's not a failure to say, and this is something I'm saying this to myself because it was when I was young, I thought it was a failure to ask for help. And I just started to, as an older man, started to realize that it's not something, that it's actually something that's strong and it makes that you better, and you benefit from the insight of those others. So the second piece is this idea that great photographers do not start with answers, that there's a certain uncertainty when you start with a project. You don't know where it's going. And one of the reasons that this resonates with me a lot is because I came out of a media background. I worked in radio and television for a long period of time. I worked with print reporters as well. And I know that in the process of doing a lot of that work, a lot of those people would get a story or get an assignment and would script it out before they went out to capture the images, do the interviews, and do the things that they were taking out there. And that it was done. They were just trying to fill in what they've already decided what the story was. But that's not the creative process. That's not what I think most of us do. There's the famous story of Alex Soth with Sleeping by the Mississippi, where it was one thing, but he completely went in a different direction for it, allowing him to do something completely different with the story. And here's Sig again, who can talk a little bit about, I guess the first question is what you started with what you ended up with? Like, did you know that the book was going to be what it is? Like, what was your initial concept?
Oh, where to start? We could talk for an hour just on this idea because it's something that you've really sort of tapped into the pulse of what I think about. If you only make the thing that you know you can make at the beginning, then you're missing out on the entire creative process because creativity is such a gift and such a this tapping into true creativity. It starts making itself, and we're just sort of running to catch up with it in many ways. You know, some people call it the flow, some people call it dropping into the muse. People have different names for it, but when you are in you can't photographic projects, you can't think them up beforehand. You might have an idea, but if you only make that thing you know, then your world will get smaller. And there's this beautiful thing when you sort of you open yourself up to the creative process in photograph in projects, but also in the making of the book, that it's the act of making it, you discover all these wonderful things.
That's such a amazing thing. It's that process, the act of making it is where the discovery is. I was just watching this video and I started to realize you guys are seeing a lot of different hairstyles for me. So I didn't realize how things had changed so much over the last couple of years. So this idea of uncertainty, and this is the only work of mine that I'm going to show, I think, in this this presentation. When we were doing the critique sessions, I was working with a couple of photographers who were coming in to do a critique, and one of the people who was going to participate to show their work, to put it up for critique, had to back out at the very last minute, and it left me with this time. And I had just started this project, which was not at the time called Passing, or To Come. It was called something else. I think it's had about 12 different names, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know where it was going, and I had no understanding of what it was that I was creating. And it was a critique with Jane Szabo and Thomas Jackson, who I'll show a little bit of it a second ago, that gave me the idea to be able to continue forward with it. So it didn't answer the question about what it was, but it allowed me, the critique discussion allowed me to move forward with it. So this project, Passing, or To Come, was, as many of our projects are, was a COVID project because I was a street photography and suddenly there weren't any people on the street. So I started looking inward to the buildings and looking what was in the buildings that were there, and started to realize there was life and there was history and there were things that were inside, and then seeing the reflections of those things that were outside. So you had the past, the present, and the future all within the image, and it all started to coalesce in this conversation that I had with Jane and Thomas Jackson on the Crit House.
Well, so I guess one of the questions is again, I mean, I did this for a long period of time where there just weren't people on the street, but I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to make it a package and to make it something that would be a unit. So like when you have a project, what do you do with something like this? Where do you go with it? Or am I asking a silly question again?
Well, I mean, again, it's what are your ideas behind it? What are you trying to say would be the first question I would ask. And that would probably, that would tell me where it goes next. You know, are you looking for what venue does it fit in? Or are you looking for what does this influence you to make the next body of work? And because I'm a fine artist, I'm going to push you to keep going in this direction and to learn from this experience of breaking out of. What I like about these is they're not so straightforward. You know, many street images are, you immediately understand what you're looking at. And
Yes.
What I love about these is that I don't understand what I'm looking at.
And what I love about that is it gave me the opportunity to look at these old pictures that I hadn't seen actually in quite a few years and realize I kind of like them. So they're coming back to the project as well. And I realize I'm much grayer than I used to be. So again, there's that idea that you start with something and you go someplace else, and where you are at the beginning doesn't necessarily mean where you're going to go at the end. We ran a series on the Crit House that was called the My Five series, where photographers and editors and publishers came in to talk about the images that had influenced them in their creative process, and to learn that, and what it taught me was that you need not only photographs, but you need to look at paintings and read books and watch movies and learn a way of seeing from all of those things, not only from the way of seeing, but meaning as well. And that those influences are part of you and part of the artworks that you create. And I start seeing myself in that. And we'll start off with Pete Souza, who is was a White House photographer for several presidential administrations, most famously for Barack Obama.
I think for me, I'm still influenced by photographs that I see. I mean, there's a lot of new upcoming photographers that I've never met that are influencing me, or at least, I look at their photographs, and I think I'm always a learner. So I'm always trying to think about my work in more current terms. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does.
And I think that it was really difficult for me to come up with five. And I think that I was influenced a little bit by Sam Abel, his talk with you, in that Sam made reference, I'm paraphrasing, because it was a while ago that I watched that, but that he made some comment about the very early influences were the most important for him. And I guess I feel sort of the same way.
It was interesting looking at that from Sam, because he had his five influences were four works of art and one photograph. Not necessarily all photography, as many people was. One of the things that Pete also said in another section, he wasn't photographing for tomorrow's newspaper, but he was looking at his photography as history and a document of history. And it certainly turned out that way if you follow Pete's work and his thing. Laura Wilson was on the program. She is not only an amazing photographer, but an author as well, and was an assistant for Richard Avedon for In the American West, and has some offspring that's doing some pretty good work as well out in Los Angeles.
I worked for him for 6 years on this project in the American West. And then I did a book myself of Richard Avedon at work on this project, which was such a big, important project. It was perhaps the most important body of work he did in his lifetime. And I learned so much from him, and learned so much from working on the project. And I mean, I could see what was important, what wasn't important, what he lost patience with, what interested him. I could also see the intensity with which he worked on every single portrait, and also the intensity with which he worked on the entire project. He would go to bed at night thinking of what he would do first thing in the morning when he got up. And he would all day long be thinking of how to improve a portrait, or who to photograph next to make a strong body of work. I learned how someone at the top of his game behaves, and that's you can't take that away from someone. That's always within me.
Can you imagine how amazing that would have been to have been on that project? It's like, it would almost be like walking alongside Robert Frank when he was shooting The Americans, and what you would learn from just being there, and the osmosis of picking up all of the things that you would be learning through that discussion and that process. So one of the other things that she said in that discussion was that a great photograph is about content and geometry. And I think about that a lot when I'm out walking, doing my own photography, again, mostly street photography, because I see the geometry, but I don't think as much about the content nor the story. And so this quote of hers rings in my head very often when I'm out taking pictures. Dan Milner is a gentleman who's has been a friend of the program from the very beginning. He's been on several times, is always we'll call him a character. He's smart. He's an excellent photographer. He works for Blurb as a creative evangelist, I believe is what his title is, but he always has something interesting to say. And one of the things that I always remember about him, just as Sam Abel, in when he chose his 5 images, only chose one photograph, Dan Milner did something very similar with choosing paintings and books that were influenced, because he knows that those things are important to becoming a good photographer, a great photographer, and he is an avid
What
reader.
I love about reading is that reading forces you to use your imagination. And when Stephen King writes about this, calling it writer's telepathy, where if he writes about a red desk, you and I can see a red desk, but what you see is different from mine. And he has this
Yeah.
ability through his words to have a telepathy with us. So I find that there's a tremendous amount of conformity in the creative world now, because very different than it was 15 years ago, because of the influence of things like Instagram and TikTok that have really we've gone from a world of photography to a world of content. And those two things, very, very different things. And I think, to read a book instead of going on Instagram is life-changing. It's one of the most important things you can do. So whatever book allows you to use your imagination. And I'm not a science fiction guy, but I know a ton of people who read nothing but science fiction because it allows them that mental escape to imagine.
Love Dan, and think about him a lot, and the assistance he's given me, not only in this program, but as a photographer as well. So I mean, overall, so what I've learned is that, like, through that discussion about people's influences in the My Five series that we had, I started to realize that the great photographers that are out there, they absorb things, they feel things, and they integrate what they are learning from other things, other artworks or other elements of life into their photography, into their stories, so that we tell other works that we didn't know were out there and available. And then on to the next piece about great photographers and curiosity and how we go about the process of doing the photography we do. And that line that before there's a photograph, you have to pay attention to what you're going to photograph. And that goes back to that curiosity piece that I was talking about before. Eugene Richards started in Boston with his book Dorchester Days, which is, in my mind, one of the great photographic books ever. In part, I put it on that pedestal because I'm a former Dorchester resident, so it hit home for me. But he is just brilliant.
Indeed, you work for publications, you work for the New York Times, or Life in the past, then that's how you identify yourself as a photojournalist. If you're giving a story to go out there and you have to cover the story on the basis you're a photojournalist, maybe I would like the term, but it's not a term people use very. Probably social photographer would probably be more appropriate.
Yeah.
In the sense that I hang out with people. So very often it's sort of like us now. I mean, you don't go out with a theme in mind. You go out there to see what would happen.
And that takes me back to what I was saying before, having come out of media, where I saw all the time reporters going out with that story already baked into their minds. And Gene spends time with people and he gets to know them before that camera even comes out, and he comes out with just brilliant work. And then there's Harvey Stein, a New York area street photographer, and his process as well.
Mostly on the street, confrontationally. I call it collaborative confrontationally. Collaborative that I go up to people and speak to them and have them know that I'm going to photograph them. I don't get their permission, but I say I'd like to, or I'm going to photograph you. And sometimes they say no, and it's too late because I've already done it. But usually I get them into a conversation. With a kid like this, obviously I'm not doing that. So I like to be straight on, and that's I would say if I have a style, that's my style, and close.
Harvey's great. So this is in the curiosity section, but it kind of comes down to this idea that what we were not talking about in the 200 plus episodes. And this is probably one of the reasons why the channel is a small one, because if you want a big audience, you talk about cameras, you talk about gear, you talk about, social media and those things. But the people who I have revered as photographers and who I've learned more from, they don't talk about those things in these conversations we have. They talk about meaning and metaphor and story, because and that may just be because of that's what I'm interested in as an interviewer, but it's this I for me, that's what I need to learn. That's what I think a lot of us need to have a better understanding of, is how to find that thing that our photography is about and what it means. That's at least what it has been for me. And this comes to the final piece, that photography in and of itself changes us. I know that my photography has made me a different person. The process of going out into the world, experiencing things that I never would have experienced before had I not had a camera in my hand, going to places, seeing things, thinking about things, getting up at ungodly hours of the day to go and capture an image that you couldn't capture at any other time of the day. That makes us different. And I hope for the people who are in my life that means that I am a better person as well, because the photography changes us. And one of the areas where this came home for me is this conversation I had with Stella Johnson, who's a Boston area photographer. She's a Leica ambassador. I love her like anything. And then Lisa Kessler, who's also a photojournalist from the Boston area. We had a conversation about Nan Golden. And Lisa talked a little bit about how photography changed Nan Golden.
She was very clear on the purpose of photography for herself. Probably the first purpose was it gave her a voice. I think that after the suicide of her sister, she has said that it gave her a voice. I think that she didn't speak for several years, but she believed very strongly, she understood from what she knew of her sister's suffering in the hands of just the very repressive norms of society at that time. It would have been the early 60s, I suppose, right? That she felt that society kept the wrong things secret. Like when I look at her photographs, I just see a very clear liberation. Like the things that you and the world think are wrong or should be hidden. No, those are the things that need to not be secrets because they're true and they're beautiful.
I didn't know much about Nan Golden before that conversation. I knew about her and I knew about the Ballad of Sexual Dependency, but that conversation was something that really changed my view of what I can be doing. Circling back to where we started at the very beginning, when I first met PPA, the Pasadena Photographic Arts, was when I participated in an open show, as was said earlier, with Nina Welch-Kling. And Nina has done this project, I think it's called Rolantando, that had this same kind of thing where what she was doing to try to capture this project changed the way that she photographed on the street.
Right. So I also love the idea that in an odd way, every person I photographed became beautiful to me in this very painterly way. So it didn't matter. It was male, female, race. It didn't matter. Everybody was like set on this kind of pedestal in this very carefully photographed manner, almost like a portrait. And that wasn't initially intended, but I felt like that it gave everybody kind of this gravitas on the street.
And you see Ellen Friedlander there, who was a part of that conversation. This was an interesting one for me because I created photo groups. So this was 6 people who came together to show their work, and each person's critique was an episode of the program. And Granville Carroll is down there, who's amazing, and at the top is oh, no, I'm forgetting his name, but there are some Los Angeles photographers. But her work was brilliant, and as a street photographer, seeing that work blew my mind because I couldn't imagine ever having seen what she did and capturing what she was doing as well. So I'm getting toward the end of this, and I just want to say, like, that the other pieces about transformation is that one of the things that happened during this process of doing all these interviews and meeting all these people and talking about people well known and not well known was that so much stayed with me. There's a sentence here and there that just sticks with me, just like, Laura Wilson says something that keeps coming back to me while I'm walking down Mass Ave in Boston. There's always like a question that creates some kind of an illumination that I've never considered before. And our failures too, right? I mean, we all think about those things that we missed or something that we didn't do as well, but those failures are learning experiences too. And then there's just this discovery, all of these things combining so that I can take it into my own photography and try to become not only a better person, but a better photographer as well. So wrapping it up, I'll go back to the beginning. I thought I was doing a show that was about critique, and it was, but it migrated and became something else. And now it's really what I think of as my own personal class, master class, or master's program, and how photographers learn and they see and they create and they come up with the great works that they do. So it's about collaboration. You've got that amongst all the people that are here, staying curious, becoming curious, trying to figure out how the world works and maybe capture it visually, embracing that uncertainty. You don't know where you're going, but just keep going. Welcoming the critique and input from others. You don't have to listen to all of it, but at least hear that it's there and give it the credence that you want it to give it to. And then just that final piece that I'm hoping, as a man who's getting on in years, to just keep learning and to keep doing more as I age and I continue to work and be a photographer. And this is just one thing that I wanted to put in there because I think about it is the best photographers that I've talked to aren't just the people who have learned to see the world. They are the people who never stop learning how to see it. And I see that in Sam Abel and Sarah Lean and Eugene Richards, who continue to learn and continue to grow and continue to do good things. Thank you all. I'll take any questions or not if you want. I appreciate all of your time and I appreciate your attendance.
Absolutely amazing presentation. One, like collaboration, community, all of these things that we know is so important. I want to share what Debbie Arlick shared just now in the chat. She's loving every bit of your presentation, Jeff, but really loving this bit. Notice what no one has talked about: cameras, gear, social media. They talked about people, life, and meaning. So that hit home. And then Lori Pond, how did you come to be acquainted with all of the photographers you featured today? Did you meet them via the Crit House, or how did you find them?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I just called them. If there were people that I knew that I wanted to talk to, I would just send an email. Well, I didn't call them. I don't pick up a phone anymore because I'm that guy. I just emailed people and I said I would love to talk to you. And I have to say that photographers are incredibly open people and are willing to share what they know and what they are doing and what they've learned. I'm sure I see Ashley Refo there, who's with the Street Photography magazine. I'm sure she's experienced that with photographers as well when they're putting together articles for that magazine too.
Erica, such a lovely presentation. Sig once said to me something to the effect that the big idea is just what gets you out the door. The work leads you out from there, which is so true. We have to be curious. We have to get ourselves out there. And everybody on this call seems to be from that way of thinking. Just keep learning, keep growing, keep sharing, community and sharing and helping everybody else make their work too helps us become better photographers.
Sig is a good example of people who are just open. Sig has been on the program a couple of times, and just first of all, I will also say, I mean, I don't know if you noticed how well put together she was in her color scheme. Every time she's on, she's just on point. She's got the background, she's got the attire, it fits with her hair and the glasses and everything. She's perfect.
Is there a photographer besides Sam and the few that you have named today that you were totally surprised by? Like you had one expectation and they came on and they were nothing like you expected.
Oh, that's a really interesting question. Well, I will say there's there was one photographer who I have great admiration for, who I couldn't please with the edit, and we never broadcast it. And so it came along that it was a pleasant conversation, but when it came down to sort of doing the edit, he was very, very particular about what he wanted out there, and so it laid fallow. And I'm sorry I can't mention his name, but I mean I think in some ways almost everybody I've talked to has given me something that I mean I don't know any of these people to start with, so I don't know that I have expectations for who they are or what they're going to say. I mean, Sam, again, just an American treasure. I was honored by him. There's an Oklahoma photographer, and I'm trying to remember his name. I'm sorry, Nebraska photographer, who works with George
Oh,
Nabetzi.
Scott? No, not Scott.
Let me find it really quickly. I can't. I'm so bad with names. I used to, when I was a young man, be good with names, but that is no longer the case. Brett Erickson. Brett Erickson was the interview I did with him was like over my head. You know, he is such a smart man. He has a PhD, and a lot of the things that he was talking about, like during the conversation, I was wrestling with trying to understand what he was communicating. And fortunately, through the process of editing and working with it and listening to it again and again, I began to sort of get what he was talking about. So that was like one that comes to mind. I don't think that was exactly the question you asked, but
No, that
yeah.
is. I mean, a lot of us come to photography in the same way. We get handed a camera, we find the camera, it becomes our friend. So many of us share commonalities in using this as a tool to express ourselves. But every once in a while, you meet somebody who doesn't come from the same background,
Yeah.
and they end up in photography and they're making imagery in a certain way, and you're like, whoa, how did you get there?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
And that's one of the great things about photography. You know, I'm like looking through the names here, and Yorgos from Boston comes from Greece, and he comes from a different background than me. But the conversation I had with Yorgos was brilliant and amazing, and I was blessed to have the discussion with him and get to know him.
Is there anybody else that may have a question that they want to open up their mic and ask Jeff? Feel free.
Hey, Jeff, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you again for that amazing presentation. And I love how your curiosity almost guided you through all of these different wells of information and wisdom. And as someone who listens to a lot of podcasts and of different mediums, I just completely agree that there's not a conversation in regards to the intentions or the kind of spiritual or physical approach towards storytelling and photos. I'm curious, from all of the different photographers that you've gotten to speak with, from like anyone younger or up and coming photographers that you are drawn to, anyone in particular that you feel like is, honoring the medium and the craft itself, but maybe is adding new elements or perspectives to it that maybe you've come across or you're inspired by?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First of all, is that a book you're working on behind you? I see pictures on the wall.
I'm doing it for a nonprofit, but my other book is actually on the other wall, and I'm a bookbinder and maker as well. And it's my first project sharing and showing, so I'm really excited
Oh,
about
very
that.
nice.
But yes,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I will say one of the I think about the mix of people that I talk to a lot, because I mean the history of photography is old white men. And that tends to be, I mean, being an older white man, that tends to be who I migrate toward, for better or worse, and I think it's for worse. So the people that I tend to talk to are people who have spent a lot of time out in the world, and are on the older side. I will say, and just because I mentioned him a second ago, Yorgos is on here. He has done a Boston-based photographer, but coming from another country. He has done some amazing work, and I love seeing the work that he does. There's a photographer who's up in Portland, Maine, who name slips my mind, but Ellen, he was on the program that we just looked at there, and I don't know if you can remember his name either. But he does great work in Portland, like documentary, dark, sort of gritty, kind of Robert Franke kind of street work. And I apologize. I'll put his name in the chat as soon as I remember it, which I'm sure will be after we hang up on the call.
Michael,
And congratulations
Michael
on the work you're doing.
Yeah, but Michael brings up an interesting idea. That would be an interesting conversation
Totally.
to add to the Crit House is young voices. Because one of the things that we are as older photographers, we want to help bring up the new generation. It's really important and it's much more difficult. It's so noisy out there. So that may be a very interesting idea that Michael may have given you.
It is a really good idea. And I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead, and I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I just wanted to add that like we're in an age where everyone can hold a camera essentially and document their world, and it's become so accessible. And I think it's become very saturated, unfortunately. And what I love about photography the most is like the active like presence that you can bring to a moment, even if you're doing it for an artistic way of expressing yourself or understanding the world. Just the act itself and bringing presence to them and is so beautiful. And I think where it gets lost sometimes is that we're not remaining present with the images we're documenting, especially now when everything is happening so rapidly and fast. So I'm almost looking myself for photographers who are of a younger generation who are applying that degree of presence towards their craft and storytelling and actively searching for that for people all over the world, really. But yeah, so I just was curious because you're such a informative, eloquent, curious person, human being. So I just had to ask. But thank you for everything.
I will say, if I'm eloquent, it's only because I really edit down my ineloquent phraseology. But you did say something that I think is really interesting. That I mean, it's almost said in a dismissive way nowadays that everyone's a photographer because everyone has an iPhone camera. I think that's something that we should embrace, right? Because everyone's a photographer. Everyone loves this thing that we're doing. They just don't understand it in the way that we're doing. They don't understand what they can do with it. And I think back to like my days when I was when I ran. I used to run the marathons and Boston Marathon, and I would hear these old timers who were like, "Oh, marathoning is terrible because everybody's doing it now." And I'm like, "No, everybody's doing it because they love it. The sport is at its peak, it's at its prime." And I feel like that photography is in that way. And I realize the business is completely different and it's harder to make a living doing it. And there aren't any publications except for Street Photography Magazine. But we should embrace it and find a way of taking all of that energy from youth and other people who have these cameras and bringing them to the fore and trying to get them to understand how to curate their work and to make it better.
Absolutely
Great question.
agree. Absolutely agree with you. 190%. Yep. Bringing up the youth, helping them see the long goal, not the short goal. It's being in this seeing for decades and allowing yourself to grow over the decades and to change. Give yourself grace.
Absolutely. I mean, look at what I was shooting when I was in my 20s, and that was awful. It's hard to look back at that stuff now. It is.
Although I would say if you went back, you would see another version of yourself in those images.
Yes.
So that's something to take in. Wow. Well, does anybody else have anything they'd like to ask Jeff? Very, very.
Yes, I have a question.
Oh, great.
Yeah. I'm completely new to the Crit House, and I'm intrigued by the community and what has been said tonight. But what's the process of getting you work critiqued and being part of the community?
Well, so that's a question I get quite a bit, and it's a challenge because we don't. it started as a critique discussion and it's shifted away from that. But as I sit now today, and not necessarily with this group, and trying to figure out what the next direction is, and having looked back at what has been done in the past, I think that I'm going to go back in that direction of having sort of these critique conversations that may be in a different format than it was before. So, Loretta, I would say if you're interested in doing that, then send me an email, and I'm sure we can provide that to you, and we can try to figure out a way of making that happen. That may be, going back to what Michael was saying before, maybe we bring a group of youth into younger people, to be a part of a critique group. Then everybody can talk about their work and have a conversation like that. So I see it coming back to the critique over the next few months.
Thank you.
Very exciting. Well, very wonderful presentation. Could
Thank
not
you.
have wanted anything more. Thank you so much for providing such inspiration for everyone. Thank you all for being here. We're so grateful for the community that we're creating and growing, and it's always expanding. Never, like, if you ever have a suggestion for us, and if you have an idea for Pasadena Photography Arts, send us an email. We're absolutely open to suggestions as well. So with much ado, have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to seeing you all again in the near future.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Keep photographing.